బయట డస్ట్బిన్ వేసాము.
Good afternoon. So postings you are very active. That's nice. Alright. So let us get into the methodology. How a methodology of a clinical study should be. Let us not see there. You tell me what you do. Methodology. Okay. You have to know whom you are focusing at. So the same example we will take. Aspirin in patients with acute myocardial infarction as a prophylaxis. So your group you should define. Who is the population? Where are you going to pick them? Door to door you will go, identify a person. You will ask them, do you have a chest pain, substernal pain, excruciating, stabbing? They will hit you. So it is not a community setting you are going to get a hospital setting. In that which setting? Cardio especially or emergency. Alright. So you have to define all those things properly. What is your study population? What is your sample size? What is your study setting? This all have to be very clear. Otherwise the other person will not extrapolate for his study setting. You write it wrongly or you don't give a proper description about it, the other person won't know how to do it. Nobody can replicate your study. Right? So here, then again, was it prospective or retrospective? Prospective, from now onwards I am going to look at. Retrospective, I will take 1 year data which was there in the MRD and I am going to work. Should you have to mention why there is a requirement to mention retrospective or prospective? Retrospective will have a lot of missing data. Retrospective, you can't derive conclusions. You can't strongly tell this is what happened. And it is a postmortem analysis. You can't do anything to the patient now with that. For a proof of concept. Are you able to understand what I am talking? Everything is a keyword, okay? For a proof of concept means to get a hypothesis. When these people are given one hypothesis like that, I will tell you. So this was in a study setting where they found diabetic patients who are under metformin, their incidence of TB is less. Understood? They took the whole data, they just checked the people with TB. In that, they found diabetes and who were on metformin therapy, the number of TB cases were less. So can I tell metformin is against tuberculosis? Don't know. There is a correlation, but there is a correlation telling that metformin people are not tuberculosis, under tuberculosis or infected by tuberculosis bacteria. Is there a relationship actually? That you don't know. But this concept is got from a retrospective study. Alright, so when you say, you have to tell it as retrospective. When you say it is prospective, then it is happening in front of you. That whoever was given metformin, they are not getting at all. That is a different concept. So retrospective has to be mentioned, prospective has to be mentioned because they will conclude with which study, which type of study you have done. So it is not that retrospective is less superior or prospective is less superior. It all depends on how you design your protocol. Retrospective is good as well. When you are designing your protocol properly and your hospital setting has all the details, the data is not missed out, then retrospective is good. Correct? Then about what is the patient, what kind of laboratory parameters they have used. You say anti-diabetic activity, you know. What is the laboratory parameter you will look at? Anti-diabetic, blood sugar level. What blood sugar level? Random sugar level. Then RDS will be there. Then post-protein will be there. Then pre-protein will be there. Then this all you put and send your article to the JPOs. Random blood sugar. Now I am going to the hospital, they will check. Just now I have had food. In 1 hour if I am checking, definitely my glucose level will be high. Postprandial, preprandial. This all depends on preprandial. I will take a diabetic medicine and I will go without eating. Yes, we can manipulate. We can manipulate, not the laboratory manipulating. I can manipulate my sugar levels. I just take an insulin and go, it will be reduced. So when you publish a data with something which is not standard, you will not get your publication done. So HbA1c is the universal standard. When you look at diabetes, all the other things you can do, it is nice, but definitely HbA1c is there because nobody can fool around it. 3 months ka data is there. You know what is HbA1c? Glycosylated hemoglobin. Hemoglobin, okay. Why is it 3 months data? RBC's lifespan is 120 days. So there you have the hemoglobin which is glycosylated, and if it is above 6 or above 10, you say that is diabetes and your drug is reducing it. More standard, right? So when you are looking for the parameters, you go for the higher standard journal and see what all the parameters they have looked at. Based on them, when you are designing a study, the study will be good. Right? So you have the laboratory parameters, and then you have your primary endpoint, secondary endpoint that you have to define properly. You also have something called a surrogate endpoint. So be straightforward first. This I am going to check. Okay. So here I say I want to see the readmissions, the reasons or the predictors for the readmissions in cardiac unit within 30 days. This is my question. Why am I asking it? Because readmissions are happening. Yesterday I saw a patient getting discharged. Day after tomorrow he is coming again. Why is he coming? He can come for anything. Now I am curious to know about it. Why this patient is coming again and again? What is his problem? Already burdened. 1 week he was there. So when you have that personal connect with the patient, you say ultimate goal of PharmD or any medical professional is comprehensive patient care. If you have that passion, if you have that empathy with them, then only it is going to work. All your research projects are going to work. If you don't have heart on it, it is never going to work first of all. Okay, so this is my problem. Why they are coming again and again? One person when I see, I find anemia in him. The other person when I see, I find bleeding disorder in him. Another person comes with electrolyte imbalance and delirium and arrhythmia. These people are all coming. Now my question is, why are they coming? What is the cause for it? Right? So that is my primary question. What is the reason or the predictor for readmission in cardiac unit after a CABG or after percutaneous intervention in a 30-day period? So that will be my primary endpoint. Yeah, I will see how many are coming, why are they coming. That is what I. Next, secondary outcome will be ADR. Because of an ADR, if he is coming, I will also monitor my ADRs. There was an anticoagulant on board. With that, he is having some vitamin K related things also, so there is an excess coagulation. Or 2 drugs going on which is enhancing the anticoagulant action, especially warfarin has a lot of drug interaction. It has a high protein binding capacity, so another drug which is displacing it from my protein. So warfarin level is high, so that he is getting a bleeding. That is my secondary. But by the secondary, I can derive the primary. Understood? So you have surrogate endpoints, you have secondary endpoints, but your primary endpoint you have to look at. So those are primary objectives you will write, then the secondary. To get the primary, you will have few of the secondary objectives which will help. Ancillary sort of it. So when you write the methodology, it will be like this. We conducted this trial, an international phase 3 randomized. Everything is there. Big sentence. That is okay, but everything should be given. Randomized, open label clinical trial with blinded outcome to test the approach of intravenous tissue plasminogen activator followed by a protocol approved endovascular treatment as compared with standard intravenous treatment. That should be there. You have to explain prospective, retrospective, crossover, cross-sectional, observational, anything. Those all you will put, and then that is your study methodology. After that you will tell you have taken permission from the ethics committee. That is very, very important. Then you say patient consent also taken. What does it consent? You have 2 things. Your patient consent and information leaflet. Okay, so information leaflet will just tell about everything. Patient consent is he has to consent for the study, being a subject. I am a subject. You can use me. You can take my data. And this all, they have to give you permission. So those are all there. That is very much important, where ethics we were studying about. So basic ethics is those things. So you will explain about everything, and then you will tell what all the other things you are looking at in this. This is the laboratory parameter I am looking at. The primary laboratory parameter is HbA1c. Along with that, even these were checked. Even lipid parameters were checked. Even liver function was checked. But the first thing is very important for you. So that is how you make a methodology properly. So the guidelines for method is write all the section in past tense. When you write a protocol, it should be in future. When you write a thesis or a manuscript, it should be in the past tense. Many a times what you guys do, copy the protocol and paste it in the thesis. And external like me will come and sit and see. I say, just keep it and say, I don't want to read it. Because it is annoying, irritating. That is, in your lifetime you are doing one thesis. But with that much importance you do it. Is it to just make a book and throw it on face of the teachers? Why are you not doing it religiously? You have to have something to work like that, right? Traditionally, religiously, bhaya bhaktito, you have to do that. Then that becomes a thesis. Otherwise, it is a chunk of book which can be thrown out. From there, don't expect a manuscript if you have not done it properly. Right? So give more importance while you are writing. Otherwise, it is an ugly piece of work which nobody gets anything out of it. And this describes all the methods thoroughly. Properly you have to explain. And then you have the investigation and review board approval. Very, very important. Without the ethics committee approval, it is not gonna work. For us, we have 3 tier boards. We have an internal committee, then we have a scientific committee, then we go for the ethics committee. By then, our students are screwed like anything. From morning, ritually, we will sit. That is the festival day. People will cry, fall down, get up. We will reject the protocols. People will curse us. They will not look at us, go this way. Tomorrow, come to sit again. Unless otherwise the protocol is not neat, we will not let them to go. If that is not there, your foundation is not there. You have to definitely do it. So, basic, you have to have a committee at your level. Then scientific committee, call people from outside. And then the ethics committee. In the ethics committee, it will go through because we have 2 or 3 level protocol. Reading, rewriting, throwing out, this all will happen. Okay. So our sitting will not hurt people, like shouting at others. Those all we will not do. Smiley, we will tell, no, it's not working. Maybe 3 months he would have worked here. Madam, can you benefit? Good one you do. Over. Okay. So this is how we do. That is called as professionalism. When you also behave with people, you need not have sword to fight with people. Just in a very good way you can tell, straightforward. In a smiling way only, you can convey things. When you put all your emotions in it, you know, your adrenergic system is exaggerated, heart rate increases, Sami will become this much, so much you have to take a breathing. This is all nonsense. You will put yourself down in front of others. So, be stable on the ground and you can be strong as well. Okay. Then include all the materials used, whatever you have done in that. When conducting a statistical analysis, very, very important, and sir wants to have a statistical workshop exclusively. That is a really good one. So you have to know which statistics is being applied. I'll just touch upon and leave in the next session. What all different types of statistics, where do you use it? Just study one and leave. And include the detailed description of the methods in the manuscript. How do you do it? It is somebody else have done it. The same thing you are going to write. So reference it. As sir told, there will be a copy. If it is a method, you have to copy only. You can rewrite it, but still you tell this et al. Have done this, we are also doing it similarly. So that can be it. Then is heart of the manuscript would be the result where many of us mess up. Okay, so results should be properly coming. It should not be ambiguous, it should not be confusing. It should have a systematic flow, a sequential flow. What you observe, what are you looking for, and you make it. And some people, to increase the page strength, they will put one figure, one table and a writer on it. Please don't do that. Table is a representative. Figure is a representative. 2 times why should you represent the same data? Not required, no? Those were all like you can avoid in your thesis. So then you say, what is the patient demographics? Why is the demographics important? Male, female, why is it important? You have to know which population is getting affected more. In which population it is more efficacious. Yes, people say, why do you have to write? It is okay, no, you can directly go to the result. Nonsense it is. That is your result. First line result is that. People who were educated did not get it. Who had middle school education got it. Then you will think that education plays a major role for this sensitization. So you will pick a population who is not not educated, you will go teach them, this is the way, use it properly. Understood? Say for example, the inhaler utilization. Asthma patients were there, these many people it was working, these many people it was not working. Now you go for the demographics and say, people who have 10th class and less education, it was not working. People who were postgraduate, it was working well. Then you understand, those people had education, they are able to use it properly. These people did not get any education, so they are not able to use it properly. So where your intervention is required, go, people who are taking inhalation with low educational background, go and teach them what it is. Correct? First you should know for that, how to take inhaler, what are the patient counseling tips, and then you have to go teach them properly. Correct. So that is very important in male, female, childhood, elderly, everything is important over here. So the result should be like this. A total of these many participants underwent this randomization, and out of this 58 study centers were there, and this are all areas we have done. Basically when you go for multicentric activities, you see this many centers were included, out of that this many centers had this many people, and this was effective in this center, not the other center. So they say different cohorts, different ethnicity. European ethnicity it is working, American ethnicity it is not working. Ancestry difference is there. And worst thing here is everything is taken from West and we say for Indian population. Now you see South India is different from North India. North Indian genes are behaving differently to drugs and South Indian genes are differently behaving. Kerala is behaving different from Tamil Nadu. So close. I am different from you when you are sitting together. Understood? Everybody has a different genetic makeup. Everybody has a different genomic makeup. So when you are doing for a big cohort, you have to know where from, what is their ethnicity, North Karnataka, South Karnataka, North Andhra, East Andhra, all those things you have to calculate. That is very important for us. We are from Bangalore. Why? Because Bangalore is called a mini South India. All population I can take. If I say Tamil Nadu and Kanyakumari to Chennai, I can have people. If I am taking Andhra, Nellore to Amaravati, I can take people there. So different ethnicity I get. So it is very important for my setting, and probably you are setting, at least you can tell these are all from Anantapur. That is also good. I say diverse, you say unified. Both are good. Right? So that is very important. So everything has to be explained by this way, and then this is a first figure. You can't make out anything with this. Why are you representing tables? Why are you giving figures? Seeing that you should understand something. Now you don't know what it is. What is x-axis, what is y-axis, you don't know. It is all the line chart or a dot chart. You can't match which figure is what or what is the number for it. So such things looks fancy, but this is not going to fetch you anything. It leaves you in ambiguity or nothing. You won't understand anything. So such things can be avoided. Basically the line chart or bar chart without any values. So the results, do not be too concise. Introduction, be concise. Result, elaborate as much as possible. Properly you write your research. Avoid being verbose. So in result you need not write poetry. Review articles, you can be little artistic, you can be poetry, all those things you can do. Or letter to editor, all those things you can play around. But this is a scientific, too scientific paper, so don't be verbose. Unnecessarily don't put words, but straightforward, give the results. Briefly report most important findings and then refer to table. So when you have table or figure, one only should be there. You can represent either table or figure. Thumb rule 1. Second, if a table is there, small paragraph you explain about it. 100 parameters are there in the table. You say most significant is this, closed. Refer table. So if I am curious, I will just refer them. Okay? Avoid bar and line graphs. Bar and line graphs are not going to give you anything. It looks nice. That's it. And include professional quality illustration. You put a figure and then we have to zoom in 10x, 100x, then also you won't see anything. Don't do that. Make it more legible. When you are putting a figure, it should be more legible. So these are the guidelines for results, the proper result writing. Then is finally discussion. The discussion, most of the thesis or protocol or manuscripts will be rewriting the results again. Again you start demographics, these many patients were there. you have to tell why did you do this study. Quickly you have to tell why the study was done. In this study, what are the salient features of this study. So salient feature of my study with the TPA is in TPA within 180 minutes if you give, it is going to be life saving for ischemic stroke. So that is a salient feature. And then you see your study finding somebody else have done it, pick them. X, Y, Z told what I am telling. A, B, C are contradictory. They are not finding in their setting. Then analyze their paper and study. Maybe they did it this way, so they didn't get it. Mine is a different setting, so I can't go by them. Understood? I say TPA is good 180 minutes. It is nice. 3 people have told the same thing. I will tell in their study setting also, but not to my extent. I say 80% it is effective. They told 40% and 70% it is effective, which is online with my study. Close it then. Another 2 studies they are telling it is not at all working. Then you have to go and study that article. Why it is not working? Then they may have told these are the problems, or in elderly it did not work, or in trauma condition it did not work, or in case of hypertension more than 180 millimeter per mercury. It did not work. Study that and you say, in their setting it did not work. Why? Because their population was different from my population. Was something different completely. So maybe it has not worked. Try to understand that and you don't strongly tell that possibility. I understand this way. This can be explained this way. Like that you can finish first. Many of you will avoid that contradictory. You say, I am online with them. Close it. Don't tell the other part. Tell it. If you tell, means when you are focusing only, you will know what you are lacking about. Or yours is 100 only, they did on 2000 people. They say because the sample size was high, maybe for that population it is not working. Mine, if I do it for 2000 people only, I can tell you. You are uncertain, you show your uncertainty, it is okay. There is a rule before, MPharms, whatever project you take, you have to have only positive results. When we did MPharm, I am from pharmacology department. I take a rat, I take a herb, I will tell this herb has anti-cancer effect, I will prove it has anti-cancer effect. The same herb has hepatoprotective effect, I will prove it hepatoprotective effect. This was taught in that school. Why? Because you can't tell it is not. Then I used to ask my teacher, how will I be like that? I say, before taking a herb only, how can I tell this is having this label? I should be God or more than that to assess it. And if so, that herb is being used in your kitchen, then nobody should have all those things, no? Correct? So most of the study they say, you have to support your hypothesis, not at all required. You say, this was my hypothesis, it was a null hypothesis, and it was proved wrong, it was proved right. Perfect. Okay, person is not going to get hurt because of it. You say, this is the original finding. Like the project, it is okay. Not for the publication, you have to like. Okay? Then you can do a mechanistic study. Mechanistic study is what I told you. 3 hours later when you go with this, the fresh clot will not be dissolved. That will be a strong clot. It will go to break it. The broken pieces of the clot can go into the remote blood vessels. It can block it, causes secondary stroke. Beautiful. Correct. So you can derive a mechanism also. While you are doing your discussion, you can derive a mechanism for why this has happened in your setting, why this has happened in your study. That you can derive. Then you have to write about the limitations. Definitely you have to write about the limitation. Because many people will be over ambitious and say mine is the best, I got beautiful results, this and that. Then you would have done it in 50 patients and you will show it. So say it is a resource limited setting. I had only these many patients. If we extrapolate to 10% of these patients, then we can study further. This all you have to explain it properly. So the limitations are very important when you are doing it. And there are something called as fatal flaw. Fatal flaw is like a deadly killer. Fatal flaws means you can't generalize it. One point you will do and you will generalize it for everything. Those are all like fatal flaws. You be specific about your results and discuss that only. Don't generalize it with everything. I'll show you examples. You will have a description over there. You will describe it in little lines. And you study the association. There will be causal association. This is the exposure and this is the event. You will have a causal relationship. Properly you will find it. You can write a causal relationship. But you have also other things. Simultaneous effect will be there. Those are really unrelated, but coincidentally happen. There is a bystander mechanism. You know what is bystander mechanism? That group is a terrorist group. You think police has come for attacking them, but here and there they will kill 2 or 3. So that is called as bystander mechanism. You are not at all related to that. You were near the cluster, so instead of shooting them, they got you shoot. Right? So that is a bystander mechanism. When you derive your results, few bystander things also will be there. So you have to understand this and this is a consequence of something. That is different from this caused this. Understood?
Give example.
So you say there is a bleeding. Bleeding associated with a disease. Bleeding associated with a drug. Antibiotics were given, there may be a bleeding. And by its own nature, stroke can have a bleeding stroke. There is a hemorrhagic stroke. So I can't tell giving drug X it is causing bleeding. Because by nature of his disease also he can get it. Say in case of heart failure. In heart failure you have given amlodipine. Amlodipine, you know, it causes facial edema or pedal edema. Heart failure also will have edema. So is it attributed because of the drug? Amlodipine causing edema or heart failure causing edema? You have to clarify it here. The end point is edema, but heart failure can also cause, the drug also can cause. So here you have to have much clarity in differentiating your results and your writing properly. So that is bystander relationship. Or you have a mixed relationship. It will be very ambiguous even for you to say that what is causing these events. Is it the drug or the environment or the patient group as such they are predisposed for this condition. So these are all there in your discussion where you have to clear up everything and then make it. It should be a straightforward sentence telling that this is a conclusion, properly you can tell, and further studies are required to differentiate between this and this. You can tell. So drawing conclusion that are directly supported by the results. So you got a result, draw a conclusion is nice. Claiming the impact of the results to be greater than that can be justified after consideration of various limitations. You say already limitation is you have done it only in 10 patients. And you say this is an excellent drug which can work like anything in the world. So you have a controversy. Alright, so you directly tell in 10 patients it is working, 90 patients it is not working. Bigger population is required for confirming it. You can't tell your finding is the best there. So guidelines for discussion, do not make a review of literature in the discussion. All of you do that, no? 10 pages discussion, 20 pages discussion. Fatigue. No. So when you have to pick some articles for your support or oppose. Somebody is supporting you, that time you quote 1 or 2. Somebody is opposing you, quote 1 or 2, and then you write by your own telling that why it is supportive, why it is opposing. Alright? Then make clear what the study limitations are. Very, very important. You have to tell this is the limitation. You say you don't have limitation at all in your study. Because for your sake you have done completely. But still you have your and their limitations you have to deal with. NNS, all results reported should be fully discussed. Don't leave any results out. Completely you discuss. Next would be tables. Table, it is so sad that many tables will not have a heading only. Many tables will not have units. You will leave the units like that. Deciliter or milliliter, you won't know how to calculate it because they are all lab parameters. Milligram, microgram, all those things. So that should be there. So a characteristic of a patient baseline should be like this. Go for bigger journals, study how they are doing it. Similarly, you can also reproduce your results with tables or figures. Okay? So here if you go, see from the starting, the age is there. Age alone is not sufficient, mean age is required. So what is the range? Then you say what is the problem and which ethnicity is there? Black, Hispanic, European. It's very important. And then which area stroke it is? Left hemisphere stroke, right hemisphere. This is what I told you. 3 are opposing it. Those 3 would have done in right hemisphere, or those 3 would have done in medulla oblongata. But yours is in cerebral head, middle cerebral artery occlusion. So you can say, in case of middle cerebral artery occlusion, this was working. But in the pontine region, it was not working. You gave an explanation here? Right? Then is again figure they say, x-axis, y-axis, everything should be there. If there is a graph, point chart, line chart, please avoid. Figure should be legible as much as possible. You have to label it properly. Each figure should have a proper label. Figure legend should be there. Title, figure legend, running notes, all those things should be there. Then with all these things, you are going to send it to a reviewer, and the reviewer quickly gives you something like this. First, you get is not happen, reject. So, after 6 months of work, 3 months of writing, you get a red rejection, you will sit and get depressed. So that is not a good point about feeling. This is always good if he has rejected with comments. We used to do that. We will go send it to a good journal. We will get the comments. They reject it as fine. We will get the comments. We will work on the comments. In the comments also, what are all doable we will do. Few they say go collect the data. That is not possible. What all you can do to improve your manuscript, if they have given something, that is a free of cost advice. You are not giving expert opinions fee for them. Free of cost you are going to get some opinion. Then why do you get hurt about it? So enjoy that. How all he has asked. Sometimes he will properly screw you. That's okay. Finish that. Or sometimes you have a major revision, minor revision, accept with minor changes and acceptance. Hardest thing to do here is major revision. The entire paper we will be asked to rewrite. Still we will have a hope of publication, but he will write, even if you revise, publication not guaranteed. But still with lot of optimism, we will start working on it. Sometimes we get it, otherwise we go for a better journal or equivalent journal. So, when you are responding to the reviewer, you have to answer him properly. It is not that whatever he has told you have to do. Some points you will be rigid. You know you have done it properly, you need not go by him. You can give an explanation. So, reviewer's comment will be there. There you say, sir, you have asked me to do all these things, but instead of this, I have done this way. This is supported by so many articles. So, may I know, can I go further like this? He will check and say, yeah, it's fine, I have not checked that. Otherwise, he will tell, no, this is stupid, you do it again. Whatever it is fine. But few you can modify, few areas if you feel you are strong, cross-checking that you are best, then you can give him reply also. It is always not accepting the review. Sometimes he may be also wrong. Right? So you have to go make changes. Show the changes where all you have made. So that he will also be little happy. So I am advising you and you don't even listen to me. So I will be unhappy about it and I will reject. So you can go by this way 80-90% and 10% you have your own liberty being a principal investigator. You know better. Provided you know better. Conclusion. Everything is over. This is the heart. First is abstract we will read. Last is conclusion we will read. If we are interested only we will get into the paper. So conclusion should be crisp. As crisp as possible. It should give all the information properly. Correct? So it should express itself completely. You have to share with others what you want to tell others. That should be there and to contribute to humanity. You say societal benefit. You say this will change the policy. This will be a guide for a policy changer, policy maker. All those things you can write in. So the conclusion section should be simple. Most common problem in this is not addressing all the objectives listed in the beginning of the study. You have to conclude telling that what are my objectives I have satisfied. Even in your thesis you have to do that. When you write a conclusion, you tell all my objectives are done. How? Objective 1, 2, 3, 4, you remember? All those things will be there. So this gap was identified. This was done. Second most common problem is presentation of conclusion that are beyond the scope of the study design. is what? For example, a case series we discuss. Case series means 5 cases, 8 cases, only so much. We discuss the merits of TPA in stroke within 180 minutes, and the conclusion is TPA is effective in stroke management. Now you understood there is a difference? For 5 people I studied. The TPA is effective in 180 minutes, and I am concluding that TPA is the best for stroke. How foolish it is. It is wrong. I should not give such statements. I have to tell properly in 15 patients whom I looked at. Correct? So conclusion should be of this. Thank you, I am not leaving, but next. Because same set in protocol and thesis. Bear me for 15 more minutes. That also I can do. Is this ready? In a research, you have to have few steps. Those steps are, first you have to think and plan. You have to know what is the research problem. How do you get problem? When you are closely associated with doctors, you sit with them, they will tell you problems. Find a problem initially, discover what is required, gather and analyze things, then you make a plan, work out, then write and publish, you can spread it across. So this is the background of thesis writing or a manuscript writing. For that, for selecting a topic, you should have this final, F-I-N-E-R, there is a mnemonics. Final is feasible. You have a problem in treating cancer? Yes? It's a global burden. Cancer is very, very important. ICMR gives you so much of funds for cancer. Okay? So you want to do a research in cancer, but you are at a primary care center. What is the feasibility? You are very good, you are ambitious, you are hard worker, whatever it is. Primary care center, if at all cancer comes, what you will do? So the setting is not feasible. Just throw it. You can try about infectious diseases there. Feasibility you study first. Feasibility, interesting. So people have to look at it. Show the burden. Novelty, ethics and relevance. This all you have to check before choosing a topic. So it is okay in your setting. Then literature review. I tell about what is the literature review, how do you go about it. Then collection, data entry, you have a proper methodological design, data analysis, write the research, then publish or submit, whatever you do. So here again, as I told, you have introduction. In the introduction, you have to have few things. What is known about it? What is known? You have to write first. Then what is the gap? What are you planning to fill the gap? That much should be there in your introduction. At the end of the introduction, when you say, in my study, I intend to do this way. Some people will write, this is a pioneering research. Such words you know. If you are sending for 50 impact factor, then it is fine. It's a pioneering research that it is for the first of kind done in this setting. Those are all little high. Let us keep us as simple as possible initially. You will become a good researcher once, that time you will rise. Not in the beginning. So, how do you introduce? Introduce the general topic, burden and impact you have to tell, importance of the topic, interest about the topic, sequence, how is it going, and gaps. At the end you will say need for the study. Need for the study also 3 points or 4 points should be there. I have seen people writing 5 pages on need for the study. Not at all required. Very Guys, if you feel the seminar or a workshop light, it is actually not light. Maybe 3 days I have not slept. Just thinking about preparing it and delivering it to the level best to you. Out of this group, 10 people have got it well. I am so happy. So a lot of work was put into it. You sit and look at your mobile, chat with others, smile, giggle, sleep, it's all okay, but still you're missing it. Next. Yeah, literature. Back. So there are two types of research. You have a primary research and a secondary research. Primary research is from a direct patient. So you take it from people around you, you take it. That is a primary research. Secondary research goes with the literature. Literature search, literature review, meta-analysis, those all goes into secondary research. Here again, systematic review and literature review. Literature review, what you do usually. When you are going for a thesis, how many literature do you keep? 5, 10, latest 5 or 10 you will keep. That is a general literature review on your topic. Systematic review is since inception till now. Without any boundaries of language, we used to take grey literature. Grey literature is any unpublished things we will take. Shodhganga, abstract, which is not published, which is a thesis lying in the shelf, everything we will take. Then without language boundary, French, Spanish, that also we won't take. Every literature we will collect together and then see the relevance. So that is systematic review. Okay? This is what I told. Garbage in, garbage out. You can see somebody is putting all the garbage inside. There you are. So this is that. We put everything, 1 lakh, 2 lakh, 3 lakh literature in. Then 10 people will sit for months together. 2 independent reviewer. Check everything. What is important from there we take. Second level. From there we take. Third level. From there we take. Fourth level. Like that, different critical appraisal techniques will be there to get a proper collated systematic review on it. So here you say there is a gap, you have to tell what is the gap, and at the end you say why am I doing this study? This study has this relevance and this importance. Next is objectives. In your objectives, PICO you have studied evidence-based medicine PICO. Yes, no? Yes. So a little broader version of it is PICOG SMART. So this is very important when you do a objective. So you should define your patient population. How do you define? Is it diabetic? How do you define diabetes? Hyperglycemia. Anybody who has a hyperglycemia is diabetic? No. So you say according to ICD-10. If it is a psychiatric disorder, according to DSM-4 or DSM-5. If it is Parkinson's, according to Parkinson's classification. So you have to tell as per the diagnostic criteria. Very, very important. As per the diagnostic criteria, if I have this population, I will include it. That is population. Next is intervention. What am I going to do with them? So that is intervention. Then I am intervening and comparing with somebody. So the comparator. And what is the outcome? And the time of this outcome. So in PICO you don't say about the time and all. So here they say even the time of the outcome, how many hours after that, how many months after that you get this. So this is important. Followed by specificity, measurable, achievable, and relevance and time. So this all together will be your objective. 4 objectives will be there. In the 4 or 5 objectives, you have to fit everything in. That is the art. So then comes the methodology. Very, very important. If you are doing PharmD, 6th year writing papers or 5th year preparing for your protocol, this is very important. These 10 steps are to be followed. Your teachers will not tell again. They have called us to do that. Once short, you learn this. One is the study population. In the study population, how are you sampling? Sampling, sample size, very important. Study setting, where are you doing it? Why? Because you have to replicate. If somebody wants to try, they have to replicate it in the same setting or a different setting. Study design, ethics and concern is done, inclusion exclusion criteria, operational definitions and study tools. What are the tools you are using? And your definitions. You will tell edema means grade 4, grade 3, grade 1. You have to mention it. That is a definition. And study procedure, statistical methods. So this all will be addressed. So here in the phase of study population, you have a target population, you have a study population, and from the study population you will sample have to, what is your population? Bigger population is diabetes people. Under that your target population is who has a foot ulcer. Under that your recruitment criteria is whatever your inclusion and exclusion is there, that you will sample. Correct? So you have to know what is your target population, from there what is your study population, and from there what is sampling. And when you are writing the sampling, basically you say I took 100 patients, I followed this is over. No, you would not have taken 100. You would have taken 300. 200 dropouts would have been there that you missed too. Okay, so the entire hospital was screened, then 1000 was screened. Out of that, the antibiotics were given to 50% of people. That you have to write. And when there is a follow-up study, then you say this many patients followed up, this many patients dropped out of follow-up. And you have to tell the reason for that also. Why there may be a dropout. Right? Why should you tell that? Because when the other person is doing similar study, he will understand this will be the dropout, and based on that he will fix his sample size. Bigger sample size than you for the statistical significance. Then the sampling. So you have the population, main population. From there you pick the samples. What are the different sampling methods? Sampling methods. You have sampling, random sampling, non-random sampling, probability sampling. Okay, so usually probability sampling will be working for your clinical setting, and non-probability will work for the, probability will be working for community setting, non-probability for the clinical setting, hospital setting. So here you have different types of sampling. You know sampling? Studied in clinical research? No? Okay. So simple random sampling is you have a random generator. Numbers will be there, computer or a table will be generating. So with that random numbers you will pick. Next would be systematic random sampling. When I get 5 patients, the third patient I will put for case. I will allocate this. So every third patient I will put, every fifth patient I will put. Like that. So that is your systematic random sampling. Then you have stratified random sampling. Stratified random sampling will have age matched, gender matched, disease matched, like that you take it. And then it's clustered sampling. In the study population, you take a cluster. That cluster you will work on. So these are the different probability sampling methods which goes with the community setting. Then you have something what is non-probability random sampling, where there is convenient sampling. I sit here, whoever comes I will take from 9 to 4. After that somebody comes, I am not taking because I am not convenient with taking anybody beyond my hours. So something like that would be a convenient sampling. At this setting I will take, this setting I omit, it is all about you. Judgmental or purpose sampling, where you have particular purpose. Diabetic foot ulcer of this grade I am going to take. That should be different from cellulitis. This all I will look and purposefully I will pick few. Then is quarter sampling, basically the trait or the qualities you will look at. Particular trait you will look at. Hyperlipidemia, the incidence of hyperlipidemia in people who got a cardiovascular collapse or something. And then a snowball. Snowball is you won't take a big sample, you will recruit one person, from there you get connection to the other one. It is usually in rare diseases or stigmatic disorders. What are stigmatic disorders? You won't even feel like telling that I have this. Maybe diabetes, maybe HIV, leprosy or anything like that. Before psychiatry, now people are feeling it fancy. Having a schizophrenia or depression, it is fine for them. These things, the infectious disorders, syphilis, this all, they will not let people, the other people know. So you can Google snowball sampling, where one is recruited from the other one, from that other one, or it will go as a chain. So it is called as chain reference sampling. So these are the sampling techniques. So after sampling techniques are done, you have a clear objective and you know what you are going to do with your samples. Then is sample size. Sample size calculation, basically, if you have a similar article before. From there, you just take the sample size of that with confidence interval 95%. And the p-value, all those things, you have a sample size calculator. So in that calculator you get. And depending on the study designs, the sample size will differ. Second point. Third point, if you don't have any study in the world, what you have planned, it will not be there first of all. If at all you are so innovative and you have not found anything, then you do a pilot study. You do a pilot in 20 or 30 people, and then based on that you can calculate your sample size. Alright? Then is your study setting. Why should you tell about the study setting? To contextualize the research. You have to describe this study is done here in this culture, this environment. This is very important. Because the same may not happen with the other student. That is the difference. To identify potential confounders. What is confounding factor? Confounding factor? Basically that confuses your research. Confounding factor is something which is present, you will get one value. If you remove it, if you get another value, that is called as confounding factor. So you will have adjusted values, putting the confounding factor, removing the confounding factor. If you study the statistics, you study about regression analysis, odds ratio, hazards ratio, wherever there is a confounding factor, you will eliminate it in C or you will have it in C to see if the confounding factor has any involvement in your results. Then to boost the replicability. So I say this is my study setting, you can do it from yours. So it will be replicated and it will facilitate the generalization and enhance the transparency or credibility of the study. So clearly you have to give the study setting. This is again very important. This is a Gantt chart. Have you prepared in your protocols? It will clearly tell how long are you going to do the review. How long are you going to do the sample collection. How long are you going to write data analysis, write, and when are you going to submit. If the Gantt chart is not there, 3 months you will do literature search. 1 month you will come with a thesis title. And by the time you have to submit your thesis, you would be with your first sample. Alright, so planning is very important. For that plan, you have to have a proper study period and you have to tell how long what you are going to do. This month what you will do, the next month what you will do. When you are in research, you have that. What is this month? Make it in 4 weeks. So end of this week, where will I stand? End of next week, where will I stand? It is not only for a thesis writing, even the departmental protocol can be like that. 3 months later, what are we going to do? Fix all the objectives of your department. You say, in 6 months, where am I? For reaching that level, what am I going to do? So you chunk it and work, you will reach the goal. From here, dreaming alone is not sufficient. You have to work towards the dream. Then would be study design. Most of you would have studied it. So when you see there is an intervention being assigned to the experimental study, you see if it is observational or you are going to have a random allocation. So intervention is there or it is an observational study, you see. When you see, yeah, there is a random allocation, you see it is non-randomized or randomized. If it is observational study, are you going to compare or not compare? If you are not going to compare, it is a descriptive study. If you are going to compare, then it will be analytical study. What is descriptive study? You will just put percentage and go off. Prevalence is this many percentage. Incidence of this ADR is this many percentage. That is nothing to analyze, it is descriptive study. If there is an analysis, you are comparing something when you are analyzing, then you go with what kind of exposure it is. So you have studied about cohort, case control. This all depends on the direction of the exposure. What is this direction of the exposure? You have exposure and outcome. First exposure, then outcome is your cohort study. Outcome first you see and then see which group was exposed to what. That would be your case control study. Both are happening at the same time. Then it is no cross-sectional study. 6 months you are checking. You give this intervention and see what is happening. That is cross-sectional. So based on the direction of your exposure, outcome to exposure or exposure to outcome, or both are happening simultaneously, you have different types of study. So this all have to be explained in your methodology. That is what I was telling about methodology explanation. Then is about the ethics and consent. What are you doing for the ethics and consent? This 4 are primary importance. Cardinal features of ethics and consent. So you see autonomy. What is autonomy? Autonomy of the patient. His rights are preserved. I respect the right of the patient. Anytime he can withdraw. His consent is important, correct. Anytime he has to withdraw. His rights are respected. Beneficiaries, this all sir also told in the morning. Beneficiaries do Third one is not to do harm. Second one is do good to the patient. Beneficence, or you have non-maleficence, which is not to harm the patient, and justice. Are you doing correct thing to the patient? Is it fair? They are not laboratory animals. When you are doing a trial as well. So this all are required. So you have consent and patient information sheet. So this is going to tell about what kind of study, why they are doing, is there any possibility to withdraw, when they are under the study, what all can happen to them. All those things they have to tell and take consent from. Consent is for investigator, patient information leaflet is for patient's understanding. Both are different. Though it is the same, your writing pattern will be different for both. Then is inclusion and exclusion criteria. This is again a big mess up many a times. So when you say inclusion, the participants who are going to yield maximum benefit will be included in your study. You have to think who I tap, I will get the text. So that should be included and it should be defined easily. It should not be confusing. This and that and this. The confusion should not be there. You have to be frank about explaining or defining your inclusion criteria, those patients or population. Exclusion is if there is a bias. If I take this patient, there will be a bias between my inclusion and exclusion, then you have to remove, not the confounding factors. Confounding factors can be there. You can't completely eliminate confounding factors, it will be there. If you take a bias of it, then it will confuse your research. So there is a bias or comorbidity which is disturbing. Generally you say pregnancy is avoided, geriatrics is avoided and pediatrics avoided. Why? Because you can't do trial on them. They are all so-called special populations, you can't do trial basically, and their kinetics is different. So you can't extrapolate to a normal adult population when you are having such different comorbidities, say liver function abnormality, renal function abnormality. You can't extrapolate for a normal thing. So such comorbidities can be excluded, and if you want to do exclusively in liver, then you take such things. Otherwise, the general if you are taking, those all can be excluded. And risk to participate. I give this drug to this patient, I feel that he will be good. He may have a risk of getting a stroke. Should not be. Contraindications. All those patients should not be included. So that is very specifically you say exclusion criteria. Sometimes you say inclusion criteria males are included and exclusion criteria females are excluded. Correct? So, if you are defining inclusion and exclusion, properly you tell. You write it here and not that will not come in exclusion criteria. Okay? Then study tools, operational definitions, what are the tools you have used? Many tools you will use. Sir was telling you have different tools you have to take permission. Quality of life tool is there. Medication adherence tool is there. So, what all tools you have used? Even your Narenger scale, for an ADR or WHO scale, whatever it is, how do you define it and how are you applying it? So that is important. Then again, the primary research or secondary research, are you going with the literature or going with the survey, interview, focused group discussion? Those all you have to see how you are making your study procedure. And finally, statistics here. Which statistics to apply for what? Correct? That is the question. So when you say statistical methods, you have descriptions, you have categorical and numerical values. So that will be given as tables, figures, pie charts, all those things will be there. And then you have numerical, you have mean, standard deviation, histograms, that can be given. And inferential statistics where the estimation of parameters, you have confidence interval, 95% confidence interval. So that will be going through this estimation of parameters from sample. And hypothesis setting, you have a p-value. P-value is less than 0.05, 0.01, 0.001. Those are all highly significant. P-value more than 0.05 is not that significant. Okay, so you will have your statistical methods. Finally, referencing. I think sir will tell about the referencing. Reference is very important to avoid plagiarism. Reference is very important to support your article. Reference is important to say who are all opposing your article. These are all required. Methodology gets into all those things. You have different styles of writing. You know what are the styles? Vancouver, Harvard style. So many are there. 10 references are there. You can sit and manually do it. there are 100 and 200 references, better go with some tools like Mendeley or Zostrow. Usually uses Mendeley. You have to study the software. Then you have EndNote. All those things if you study, you put all your articles, it will come. Then manually one check you can do. Many articles are rejected because of poor referencing. Okay, some people will put surname, some people will have the initials. After initial, there may be a full stop. Initial, there may be a comma. Short form of the journal will be there. Full form of the journal will be there. Year will be initial or year will be at the last. So these are all there in referencing. Different styles will have different referencing formatting. So you have to respect the author's guideline and see to it and then go it. Because students usually will be lazy in doing it. So there are quick methods where you can set it properly. Then would be avoid plagiarism. Don't copy, cut, copy, paste. Never do it. Understand what is being told. Understand. Write it in your own language. Now you have Grammarly which is correcting yours. And basically I say when you are writing English, first you think it in your mother tongue. All are Telugu? Correct. Appropriate words you will get in your mother tongue. So you sit and think about it. Then if you write, you will get appropriate words. Then you can keep checking with the synonyms and play with so that you get a proper sentence. Correct? And how long do you feel or it takes time for writing an article? Keep it at introduction. Minimum 1 month you have to sit. Writing a paragraph, it takes 1 week for me. I do, redo, 3, 4 paragraphs in an introduction. If you sit at a stretch, maybe 2-3 days or 1 week properly to redo, have the reference properly, finish everything. So 4 weeks if you keep, 1 month you can do end to end. Only that work you have to do if you do so. So if you are inconsistent in doing that, it will not work. You will lose touch and it will not work. So keep publishing. Publication is very important. Carry forward. Having good publications is adding stars on your name. You get a lot of job opportunities based on that, and scientifically you will be very strong. You will have voice to talk if you have good papers. Thank you.
Students are having any doubts? You can ask. It's better to ask to the guest faculty rather than discussing among yourselves. If you are having any doubts, you just ask the faculty.
One article issue. Can you see this publication? Just 2 more minutes. Can you see this publication? You can just Google this and see what is the impact factor of it. It is 13 impact. What is the status of this article is in geriatry and gerontology of the world, it is second out of 50. Ranked second. And how much effort was given to it is 3.5 years. This should be the effort calculated. It is not for laughing. Just go down a little. You can see the consort. You see the consort, you will understand. See, this is the consort. I was asking you, do you know consort? See how many articles we have taken? From government, 1,07,000. European C 52,000. Huge Navigator, Progress, these are the different search engines. With all these things finally deduplication, we got around 2,43,051 articles. Then records will be screened, exclude unnecessary things, garbage in, garbage out. This is what I was telling. So appraisal. With the critical appraisal, we got 820 with new Hassel Ottawa scale, and with Eugenie 371, and finally we got 117 studies. Out of this 117 studies, you see the table. I was telling you table, no? So this is the kind of table with all subgroup analysis. So this the subgroup analysis was done, and this is a meta-analysis. So when you have an exclusive program for systematic review meta-analysis, because you can't do it in one day, it should be 2-3 days you have to study this. Then you have something like this. This is called as a forest plot. At least learn what they are. Forest plot, funnel plot, risk of bias, everything will be addressed. So this is one kind of study, the systematic review, which takes really 2 to 3 years when you do it exclusively. Correct? So similarly, we have a lot of case report, case studies. So different study designs, one you try to do. So you will know how to do it. All the best for a good publication.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, we'll proceed with our another session.
Good afternoon again. So those who are not sleeping can stand once. Okay. Big round of claps. Claps. Okay. So those who are sleeping will wake up with this. We'll start the session.
This is fully innovated and have good flexibility. If you pull your ears, you will not sleep. When you are sleeping in the schools, things are little clear. So this is to activate.
Okay, we'll start the session. So you said that you are doing journal club, right? From which journals you are taking the articles? So PubMed is not a journal, right? That is a search engine where you will have different articles published by different journals. So can you name any journal? Elsevier again it is a publisher, it is not a journal. Anyone? One journal name? Indian Journal of Pharmacy Practice. Yeah. So that is one example. So you can see how you need to target the journal, which journals has to be taken. So first point is target audience of the paper. If you are doing project on pediatrics, so respectively you have to choose the journal, right? Journal scope, so they will say it is confined to pharmacist, medical or dentist. You cannot take, because it is a pediatric journal, so dentists are working on pediatrics, you cannot choose that. That is one more aspect. Acceptance rate of a journal. So when you are sending an article, how big or what are the parameters by which they are accepting the article in that journal. Average time to the first decision of a journal. If someone of you have communicated any article to the journal, you will understand what is the time they take to reply for you. So what do you think, how many months they will take? After you submit an article to a journal, to say their decision, whether it is accepted or rejected, how much time they will take? So there is no such hard and fast rule. It depends on the journal. So some people may take even 2 years to say their decision. It depends on the journal. So pattern of writing a paper. So, and also refer to the recent issues of any journal if you want to get the updated things. Also look into archival or online repositories, and also there will be some special points in the sense there will be some supplementaries. So few articles cannot include all the data, so at that time they will be publishing it as a supplement. So that information you can collect. So these are the quick things that you can understand. What are the methods that we use for comparing the continuous measurements and also for the categorical variables. So you can understand from this, when you have to use the t-test, what should be the proofs and what is the assumption. So always it should be the normality assumption. If you want to do the chi-square, both the fields should be categorical variables. So these are some quick things that you can remember. By using this, you can apply in your research activity. So when you have to use t-test and ANOVA is the major question, right? When you have two groups, you will be using t-test to compare. If you have more than two groups, directly you can go with ANOVA. And if you have very less number, always we prefer to use Fisher's exact test. So these are some quick rules you can remember. So this already madam has shown, right? So majorly we have two things, that is experimental studies and the observational studies. Again, you can see in the observational, what we generally do in PharmD level are these three things: cohort, case controls, or cross sectionals. So how many interns are here? So what type of study you have done among these three? How many did case control? Any batch has done case control? Can you name that? What is the study? So what is the exposure in your study? What is the result? What is the outcome? Okay. And how many did cross-sectional? Cross-sectional studies. What is the study? Usage. Okay. So anyone did cohort studies? Cohort studies? Yes or no? Why? What is the reason? Long duration of the study. That is the right answer. So generally we do case controls or cross sectionals, which are easy to perform within 6 months of duration. So only we choose this. Otherwise, if you are planning this project, even if you are in 5th year, you can continue that in your 6th year as well. So like that you take long period duration of the study, you can continue. So at that time you can follow this cohort studies. You don't need to restrict only for these two, as majority of us will perform. So these are the things that you generally read when you are looking for the PharmD, right? Rate, ratio and proportion. So quickly I will take you through this. So what is rate? So you can see measure the occurrence of an event or disease in a given population during a given period or whatever the time that you are going to mention. That is a rate. So majorly we will use this death rate in the articles if you are doing the journal terms. It is number of deaths in 1 year over total mid-year population, and always we need to calculate in percentages, so we are taking it in thousands. So how you will calculate the total mid-year population? In many articles you see this, right? Mid-year populations. It means whatever is the study population in the month of July, that is called mid-year population. So that things you need to understand. Once you are reading, no article will explain you what is meant by death rate and what is mid-year populations. So these basics you should understand to understand the article. Ratio, as you know, it is the value obtained by dividing one quantity over other. It's male to female ratios, which is very commonly that we use. So like this, even in the newspaper you can see, right? What is the ratio of male to females. So here you can see in which state, what is the ratio, and what is the mortality rate. These are the things that we use commonly in also epidemiology as well as in the public health. So if you are looking for the job opportunities in public health, you should be thorough with all such things. Proportion, any example? So here you can see this is also a relation or magnitude between the two quantities, and the numerator is always part of the denominator. Whereas in the ratio, numerator and denominator both are different set of groups or populations. I'm not going in detail, just the basics I am showing to you. And also you can see crude death rate. Most of the oncology papers and all, you can see these terminologies, crude death rates and other things. Or anytime you are seeing the introduction of the new molecule, this terminology will be utilized. So number of deaths during 1 year over mid-year population, that will be giving you the crude death rate. So previously what I have shown, this is death rate. This is about the crude death rate. So you need to understand all such minute differences. And also you have specific death rate. So specific death rate you will take again from the crude death rate. Crude death rate means because of whatever reason that is happening, you are going to document and record that. Specific means you want to target in pediatrics what is the death rate, in males what is the death rate. Like that you will be going in deep into the specific details of the mortality patients. Then we have case fatality rate, major use for the pediatrics. So you can see number of deaths due to cholera over total number of cholera cases into 100, and also very important in the public health. So you will have some disease condition, for example in Anantapur, some X disease is there. So how many people are suffering with that X disease and how many people die because of that X disease. That will give you the case fatality rate. So because of occurrence of this disease, how many deaths are going to happen in this area. For that purpose you will be using this. And also you have proportional mortality rate, number of deaths below 5 years or number of total deaths into 100. Again it is a specific thing. So you will be taking the proportions in which set of group, what is the death rates. Survival rate, again you will see only in the oncology cases. How you are going to calculate? Patients alive at the end of 5 years over total number of patients treated into 100. For example, one new drug has come for some lung cancer. So total 100 population you have taken who are suffering with lung cancer. That will be your denominator, total number of patients whom you are going to treat for the lung cancer. So today you are giving the treatment cycles. After 5 years you will see in this population how many are alive. That will be your numerator. So patients alive at the end of 5 years over total number will give you the survival rate. Again subsets will be there based on the staging and all, that is a different aspect, but this is how you will be calculating. So if you read any oncology things, all such things will be. And prevalence, which you know because you already told, we have done the cross-sectional studies. In prevalence we look for two types. One is point prevalence and another is period prevalence. Point prevalence is at a certain point of day, today, in this week. Whereas period prevalence, you will take a duration of 3 months, 6 months like that. That is the difference between these two things. Next we have the incidence. In which studies we use incidence? Cross-sectional, always you go with the prevalence. For the studies you will be using incidence. So here you will be taking number of new cases that are occurring over population without disease into 100. That will be giving you the incidence proportion. And for the incidence rate, number of new cases of disease over person time at the risk. With this you will calculate the incident rates. And cumulative incidence also we have, very rarely that we use for our project works. But to understand you can see this formula. person time years. So this is also important thing that you can see. So what is meant by person time years? It is the cumulative time that all the persons in the study has underwent. So you have taken 100 patients in the study. You are following that for 1 year. So what will be the person years there? 100 patients you have taken in your study. You have followed all the 100 patients for a period of 1 year. What you will call it as person time then? You can see this example, right? So for 5 patients, 5 years we have followed. Cumulative is 25 years. Likewise, 100 patients 1 year means 100 years. Each patient you are following, so total 100 patients into 1 year, so that gives you 100 years. So you have taken 100 patients, same example, but 50 patients you have followed for 6 months, 50 patients you have followed for 1 year. Then what will be the person time years? All 100 1 year, I am saying it as a 100 years. 50 6 months, 50 1 year. What will be the person time? You can calculate quickly. 50, already I said 1 year, so 50 years is there. Another 50, 6 months. You need to calculate. 25 years. So you can consider it as a 75 years. Likewise, the person time years do change. So relative risk odds ratio on a daily basis that we can see. So relative risk is incidence of outcome with exposure over incidence of outcome without exposure. So this formula all of you know. So once you put this, you are going to get this scoring, right? Relative risk 1, greater than 1 or less than 1. So what is your interpretation with that relative risk? So if I say relative risk is 1, what will be your inference for that? Mentioned here already, right? No risk of outcome. Either it is not beneficial nor it is causing any risk. If the relative risk is greater than 1, there can be harmful effect. If it is less than 1, you can say it is having beneficial effect. Like that you need to interpret. Otherwise to calculate it is very easy. You will take incidence in the exposure and incidence in the non-exposure. Very simple math, but how you interpret is the important. So with that relative risk, also we will calculate the attributable risk. It is nothing but incidence risk among exposed minus incidence risk among non-exposed. Here we are not going to divide. Here we are going to just subtract. That will give you the attribution which can be considered, which is very high. So last one we have is, so that you know, this is odds of exposure in those with disease over odds of exposure in those without the disease. So both risk and odds ratio are same or different? Same or different? You cannot use, right? Same thing. When you are using the relative risk, the meaning is completely different. When you are using the odds ratio, the meaning will be completely different. So there are no such standard rules, but majority of the times, whenever you are doing the case control, what is the thing that you will take? Relative risk or odds ratio? You will be taking the relative risk. So that's how you can remember if you are using the multiple studies, when we have to use the what type of study method. So next, about the good sources of this journal. Always go with the high standards, like having the university presses from the big universities like Harvard and Cambridge, because the literature I have taken from the western part. You have major publishing houses like Penguin and Random House, well-known organizations like UN and other governmental websites, well-known newspapers media sources like BBC and CNN, some medical magazines, and all online journals. So these are considered to be some good sources from which you can take the articles for your reference. Bad sources, Wikipedia. Why we should not rely on Wikipedia? Anyone can update the information on that. Or any personal blogs, you can come up with your own blog. So whatever you are giving, I am not going to take because there is no authenticity for it. Non-credible newspapers, magazines, and some of the redundant journals, editorials. All such things you should not follow for your reference activities. So we are talking about impact factor. So in previous session, Madam has said the paper has got accepted in impact factor of 13. So what it means to you? Any idea? Anyone has what is meant by impact factor? So more the impact is good or less the number it is good? So if I say 50 is my impact factor, that is good or 1 is good? So they are saying 1 is good. So you can see here, so how you need to calculate the impact factor. So citations in the last 2 years or 3 years, again that depends. Generally you take last 2 years over total number of articles that got published in that journal. That is the simple maths that we can do to calculate the impact factor. So this is the important one. So we have one journal, they have published 200 articles in last 2 years. Got it? Clear? One journal is there. So this is 2023. In 2021 and 2022 together, they have published 200 articles. So those 200 articles were cited by 500 people. So 500 citations, these 200 articles are having. So now you calculate what is the impact factor. 500 divided by 200. What is the impact? One of you can use calculator if you want. 2.5. If it is 2000 over 200, 2000 citations, articles are 200. 2000 divided by 200. 10. So now you understood, right? What is the impact of the madam study? Every article might have got so many citations. That's why the journal is having more than 10 impact. That is why you need to understand. More the number, more the journal is useful to the society or to the researchers. That is the thing you have to calculate the impact factor. So in medical field, maximum what we see is up to 40 to 50 impact factor. The more the number, it is good. So you can aim for 10, 20 like that. And if you are working in some astrology and all, where very less journals are there, they'll be having the impact factors of above 100 also, because of the limitation in the number of journals. That depends on the field that you are going to work. So impact factor, you can see various things like Web of Science, Scopus and Simajo Journal of and Country Rank. So in these sites you can see what is the impact factor. And why we need to understand about the impact factor? Because this can support the selection or removal of the journals. In your library, if you have 10 journals, all are having less than 1 impact, that is not good. It should have impact of 1, 5 and up to 10. That mixture of things should be having in the library. That is used by the librarians to select the journals. Publishers and editors, how it is useful? They can determine the journal's influence. Every year, the journal's impact is going to better or they are going to degrade. That is a measure or metrics for the editors also. For authors, you can identify which journals, if you publish, more reach will be there or more citations can be achieved. Wherein we are interested, right? We are all authors. So this is the thing which we want to look into. If you want to get more citations, what you have to do? you have to publish in a journal which is having high impact factor. Next is for the students, same thing. You can discover whether to find the current reading list in the respective fields. So one more thing we have is H-index. If you have the Google Scholar account which is free, so all of you have Gmail account? All of you are using Gmail? So all of you can also open Google Scholar account. So if you are publishing some information or the articles, you will get this H-index directly from the Google Scholar. So how you are going to calculate the H-index? You can see here. So number of papers and number of citations you will be having. So you might have 11 or 13 articles. That is the number of papers. Left hand side if you see. So take an example, myself, 13 are there. 13 articles are there. So article 1 is having 73 citations. Article 13 is having 2 citations. Based on the ascending order, these will be kept in a ranking in the Google Scholar. So how you need to calculate H-index? So you can see here, paper position minus 1. So how you calculate the paper position? It should be equal to or greater than the number of citations. It is very important to understand here. So this 73 is greater than 1. That's right. 17 is greater than 10. 8 is greater than 11. So you have to cut off till here. Your number of citations should be greater than the number of or the position number. That's how you need to calculate the H-index. So here in this example, 17 is greater than 10. So that will be my cutoff. So you can see here, paper position minus 1. So I will take, because 11th paper is not having more citations, 11 minus 1. So my H-index will be called 10. This is how you need to calculate your H-index. Clear, right? How to calculate the impact factor, how to calculate the H-index. These two are important for you if you want to continue your profession in the academia or research. So you should be having more impact factor journals, publications, or you should be having the more H-index. So how you can boost your H-index? So collaborate with mature researchers, so they will be knowing what is the core interest of areas where you can work on. So that will help you. Choose your journal carefully. Even though you are conducting very good research, if you are publishing in not a good journal, your research will be wasted. Publish in open access journals. So there are two things, open access and closed access. Anyone know that? Have you heard about this, open access and closed access? Yes or no? So few journals will keep all the articles in open access, means you will have the access to that. You can download the complete article, PDF. Closed access means unless you pay, it is not, or you have subscription, you cannot access to those articles. That is called closed access. So if it is in the open access, many of the people will take your article, so you will get more citations. Try with review articles first, then go to the research things. In that review also, as already madam said, we will go with narrative review, systematic review, then finally the meta-analysis. Good? Yeah, that is paid one, but in order to increase your H-index, that is the only option. Because if it is closed access, many universities will not have that access, so they will not cite your article.
So paid one with good impact factor. Predatory is also you pay and you will get it. That paid ones will be 1 lakh cooler. This is 1,000 to 1,000. So that difference.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the thing that we are having. You are doing the entire research, you are writing the manuscript, you are paying and publishing your work. So that is there, so you need to find out which are the journals which are not taking charges for your research work. That is a good thing to do if you can identify those journals. And what are the problems with this H-index? It is difficult to compare H scores across the fields. So I am working in physics, you are working in pharmacy, someone work in mathematics as well. So we cannot compare H index of my field with your field. That is the limitation of this. Because in your field, reaching 100 is very easy. In our field, 10 is only very difficult. So we cannot always compare that. So self-citation, you will publish one article initially, you will quote that same thing or cite that in all your rest of the articles. So having self-citation is also possible in order to increase your H index. The H index also strips out any information about the author order. So you will be part of some big study, you are the 100th member in that article. But same H index like first author, you will be getting the same things. So we cannot differentiate whether you are really contributed to that or you are just a part in that article. So many limitations are also there. The result is that there is little information about whether you published an article in a top journal on your own or whether you are one member of a huge team. If you see the clinical trials, 500 people will be there, right? All 500 members will be cited sometimes if you are doing the clinical trial. If you are part of the 500 member, also you are going to get very good high impact journal and your H index will be increased. So research performance is complex, multifaceted, that cannot be assessed adequately by means of a single indicator. All this we use for a metrics, but it is not a final thing that we need to consider to assess one's capability or any person. We cannot directly judge with these numbers. We have to also look into the content of the articles, what they have done. So many other things are also. And also we have something called eigenfactor score. If you are further want to interest to understand all such metrics of bibliography and all, so there is this factor will remove the citations. All self-citations of the articles will be removed by using this score. So if you want to remove your self-citations, then you can adopt to this eigenfactor score. So if you want to see the profile of any researcher, so majority of the researchers or the authors will have these profiles. The first one and the widely used is ORCID ID. So all the researchers will be asked to create this ORCID ID. You can open this website. It is free. You can log in and you can create your own ORCID ID. Next time onwards, whenever you are going to publish any article, you can link your article to this ORCID ID. So next time onwards, you don't need to give all the list of the articles. If you are going for any interview, just give this ORCID ID number and your H index. That shows your strength, how many articles you have given and what is your H index score. So researcher ID in Web of Science you can get that. Scopus, Google Scholar already mentioned. Microsoft Academic ID. So ResearchGate, how many are using ResearchGate? Yeah, if you are not using students, you can also create. ResearchGate and Google Scholar are must for you. Even though if you are not publishing, you can see already published articles from these sites. ResearchGate is very useful for that. And also we have SSRM, this is the website. Again, it is also a free. What all I mentioned here are free, you can open them. And also you have impact story. This all will give you the same statistics in a different representation. So we come across these terminologies, right? Citations, references, bibliography. So all are same or different? Same? So references and bibliography same or different? So at the end of your thesis you might have already written, right? So what you have mentioned the name, bibliography and references. Interns answer. Bibliography you have mentioned. So at the end of this presentation you can see whether the use of bibliography is correct or not. So all are different, and citation, all of you know, it is a reference to a published or unpublished source. If you are writing some article, if you are using some information and you are going to cite that in a alpha numerical expression, so in some journals you are writing as 1, 2, 3 numbers, superscript or whatever it is. In few journals you are going to give the author name based on the style that you are going to adopt, right? So that all is called citation. Means you are using some other article to quote it as in your article. That is called the citation. So why citation is important? Already morning I have told. Not to have plagiarism and so many other things. Two additional points: to uphold the intellectual honesty, to attribute prior or unoriginal work and ideas to the current sources, to allow the reader to determine independently whether the referenced material supports the author's argument in the claimed way or not. Because you have quoted some article, but you have written your own conclusion. So we need to cross-check, right, whether the previous study was having the same information or not. For that also it is useful. To help the reader gauge the strength and validity of the material the author has used. So for all such purposes, we need to have the citations. And the reference, an organized listing of works cited in the text placed at the end of the document. So whenever you are writing any article and all, we will not call bibliography majority of the times. We call only as references. So references as stated here, at the end of your manuscript, you are going to list out all the articles that you have used to write your manuscript. That term is called reference. And bibliography means, so you might have read some articles and you have used some articles. Both are different. Whatever you are using, you are already citing that. That is called references. Some articles you might have read, but you have not directly used in your article. But that knowledge has helped you in doing some other procedures. So when you are using that type of things, that is called bibliography. That article directly you have not used in any of your manuscript or thesis, but you have read that to understand the better process understanding or methodology. Those articles will be considered as bibliography. So that is the difference between references and bibliography. Now it is clear. So complete citation information starts with author, title of work, date of work, page numbers. So what style you have used for drafting your thesis? Referencing style. Vancouver or Harvard? If you are saying Harvard, institute should follow only one, right? Which is correct. So Vancouver. So that is, you know already how we have to cite from the Vancouver. So how you have taken Vancouver style? All of you have written every article on your own manually. So you have done your thesis. You mentioned you have used Vancouver style, right? So for thesis, anyone will use generally about 25 articles. So for writing all the 25 articles in the references list, so how you have written that in the Vancouver style? From where you have taken? Because different journal will be giving the citation in a different manner. So how you have cumulatively written the Vancouver style? Interns already completed, submitted, right? From where you have written the Vancouver style? Yeah, it can be wrong. You answer how you have written. Manually you have written. Then how you have written? So there are some reference generators also. If it is Vancouver, it is already available in the Google Scholar. You have to just copy your title, put in the Google Scholar. It will show cite in 3 formats. One of the format can be the Harvard and one will be the Vancouver. Like that also you can take it. Otherwise, you have so many reference generators. Just copy your title in that reference generator. Whatever style you want, you can choose here like this. APA, MLN, Chicago, Harvard, Vancouver. Once you choose your style, it will show. Very easy to generate. Just copy your title and use it. Next time onwards, you can utilize these reference generators. So 90% of reference generators are already free. Just open that in Google. You can copy paste, use that. So this is the one thing that we can use. Scribble. So style needs to avoid plagiarism again. To provide a clear, uniform style for the references. You cannot write first 10 in Vancouver and another 10 in Harvard, right? It has to be uniform. To to organize your paper so it is less confusing for the reader as well. For all such purposes, we are doing this citation and we are following one style. So which style we need to follow? It is at the discretion of the institute level or from the university level. So what generally you cite, whatever articles you are going to get, right? But that is not correct always. Even if you are getting some information from any of the Twitter, Instagram, some YouTube channels, that may not be converted into articles all the times. Some researcher is there, he can give only talks in YouTube. He never published any information. But if you are taking that information from YouTube, that also you need to cite it. Even apply same thing from the newspaper, some editorials, some scientists will write for the newspaper, some will be doing only Twitter tweets they will do. If you are taking any such accounts, Facebook information for adverse reaction, all such things has to be properly cited. So basically this slide shows any social media also if you are using, you have to compulsory cite it. So which referencing style is right one? As I said already, different styles are there, depends on the university selection. So they will be having some rationale why they are following such things. You can ask your institution or reference university, they will say why they are following only Vancouver, why not the other style. So these are the few styles which I am not going in detail because that is self-understood if you read which style, what is the format that you are going to utilize. So this is what I am mentioning, citation missions. So different things are there. So once you are writing all the citations in your article, you have to also generate it in the references, right? You don't need to copy that. By using this citation mission, once you put it in the citation, means in the manuscript, in introduction, for example, you are using some 5 articles. In discussion, you are using some 5 articles. So those 10, you don't need to personally, manually copy and keep it in the references. If you are using this citation mission, just drop and keep it in that. Even in the MS Word, you can select that. So once you do that, directly it will come at the end of the Word document. That's how you can easily use this citation mission. For using this, so many are there, like EndNote, Mendeley already, madam. Yeah, it will be updated. Yeah. So in introduction, you have initially used 5 articles. So later you felt the 5th one is not correct. You have removed that, automatically it will go. So these are the standard things that we can use. ZepRef, Zotero, EndNote, RefWorks, Mendeley. So EndNote and Mendeley, if you don't have the subscription, trial versions are for a longer period. That also you can use. I think many universities I have seen students are using the cracked versions. Not advised to use that, but you have, definitely you can use that.
And manually you have to check it. After that you use it and once pure and there few errors are there. We will check it once.
Yeah, that can, definitely that has to be there because this is used just to ease your work, but it is not 100% correct. Here and there can be some chances of mistakes happening. So obviously you will do the manual check once. That is just to delete only. So ProQuest, Ebasco, cite this for me. This many students are using at our university also. Writem, Research Image Management. So different tools are there. Half of them are on freely available. You can use that, start using them. Because each one will have the separate procedure to follow. So it is not like within half an hour you can follow this. So individually there are some YouTube videos that are available. If you want to use Cite for Me, there is a detailed video that is already present in the YouTube. Just open one tab YouTube, another, or you can use your mobile for looking the video and for the YouTube. Open your laptop, go to the Cite for Me, follow the steps that are already given in the YouTube. Very easy to follow. Being in a 5th and 6th years, you can directly do this. Nothing complex. While using, you will understand what is the benefit or what is the advantage of having this type of tools. So, any questions you can ask. So as I said, if you are directly copying any figures, first thing is it is not checked in the plagiarism. So figures it can't take. So even the plagiarism will be there. That is one thing. So you cannot avoid the plagiarism when you are copying some direct images. So ideally you should not be using unless you seek the permission from the authors. The author is giving you the permission, you can use them. Otherwise it can be replicated, you can develop your own figure by using them. These are the things that we do. Yeah, for making figures, there are some websites. The names I have not kept here and I don't remember. But I can text you the references, how you can do diagrams. So morning you have filled the questionnaire forms, right? So now same questionnaire form you can fill now. Now you see the change. Morning out of 20 questions, how many you have filled? Now how many you are able to fill?
Thank you, sir. I request the students to fill the questionnaire form, and also feedback form has been submitted to you. Please fill that and submit the filled feedback forms to the volunteers. Submit both forms.